Hi, I'm Riley. I'm going to be talking a bit about the Isle of Rockall and control of the North Atlantic. Rockall is a small granite island. It's about 450 kilometers from the Scottish mainland. It's about the size of a house, it's uninhabitable, and it's very important concerning the placement of borders in the North Atlantic. So, ownership of it is very heavily disputed among its surrounding nations. This is because ownership of the island, as well as its status, whether or not it is an island or not, it grants significant economic control of the North Atlantic, including access to important fisheries and potential natural oil, gas, and mineral deposits. The last 60 years have seen the United Kingdom, Ireland, Denmark, and Iceland all sort of disputing ownership of this small rock and the surrounding plateau outlined here. You can see in this chart here the existing claims of the existing economic zones of each of these nations: Iceland in blue, Denmark in yellow, the UK in red, and Ireland in green. So each one's kind of looking to expand these by claiming ownership of this tiny little rock. So a little bit of background on Rockall and why its status as an island comes into question, and why that's important is Rockall is an isolated granite pinnacle of the Hellens Reef. It's very, very small, about 25 meters wide and 30 meters long at its base. Rises to about 17 meters. You can see in this image here, there's a couple people, and this is a water tank they lived in. It's not big at all. There's no soil, there's no fresh water. The only real flora or fauna you're going to see are seabirds, algae, moss, mollusks. And that's important because the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea states that a rock which cannot sustain human or economic life shall not grant exclusive economic zone or continental shelf rights. So some of the value in owning this island kind of came from the fact that it was extending the borders outwards. And when the UNCLOS came into effect, it sort of stated that you have to actually have a properly economically valuable habitable island to get such rights. So a little bit about why Rockall is important and why these nations might be so committed to disputing its ownership. The islet itself isn't really of any sort of economic value. However, the surrounding structure, the Rockall Basin and Trough and Plateau, all have some fairly important economic significance to the surrounding nations, especially Ireland and the UK. The Rockall Trough is a very highly biodiverse environment. It's home to a rich deep sea fish ecosystem. And so this is important for the fishing industries of the United Kingdom and Ireland. It's very easily trawlable. So ownership of the islet and the border situation there kind of dictates who has prime access to these fisheries and how it affects that nation's economy. And in the Rockall Basin, as pictured highlighted in green and blue here, separated by the UK and the Irish Rockall Basins, these are each nation's claim to it. Potential significance in mineral exploration and then gas and oil exploration, but it's been very difficult to kind of carry out any sort of surveys due to the disputed natures of the territory. So resolving this is a fairly important economic significance to figure out whether or not it's worth, if there's anything underneath there to be exploited. And then there's also some scientific interest due to the fact that several aquatic species have been discovered in the seas near Rockall itself. So there's some kind of ecological implications there too. So a little bit of background on the claims to the island. It was annexed by the UK in 1955. However, there have been previous visits to the islet that have been recorded, as well as potentially many unrecorded. It wasn't really considered a significant feature until the 20th century. But from 1955 to 97, it existed as a British isle, and so was used by the UK to sort of extend their control outward in the Atlantic and their borders. It was also used as a basis for claiming the Rockall Plateau itself as part of the UK's continental shelf. However, in 97, when the UK ratified the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, as I mentioned earlier, Rockall could not be considered an island, and so was not relevant in determining the UK's exclusive economic zone. So it kind of moved back. It before 97, it would have been about here on the figure. You can see now it's moved back to just past Rockall. However, they still maintained their claim of continental shelf due to the fact that Rockall still existed just barely within their exclusive economic zone. So you can see this green line here kind of outlines how their continental shelf claim still extends much farther outwards. However, several other nations have laid claim to the island since Iceland became the first Western country to ratify the UNCLOS in 1985. So you can see in this right figure kind of each nation's claim is outlined. Iceland in red, the Faroe Islands in purple, Ireland in yellow, and Britain in green. And so Iceland actually claimed a very large part of the northern Atlantic, extending far past the Rockall Plateau, about 700 nautical miles south of the Icelandic coast. And then Denmark claimed pretty much most of the plateau. This is due to the fact that the plateau makes up part of the same microcontinent as where the Faroe Islands are formed from. So they claimed all of that as part of their continental shelf. And then Ireland claims this kind of southern part of the plateau outlined in yellow here, and the UK maintains the claim of this northern part. And this has led to some conflict between Ireland and the UK with these sort of disputes of ownership, because when the UK was part of the European Union, Ireland had access to an exclusive economic zone for fishing rights. However, they would not have had access to the 12 nautical mile radius around the Rockall Islet, because that would be considered territorial sea. Ireland, however, does not recognize Rockall as a British island, and so what would happen is Irish fishermen would come too close to the island and then be accosted by the British Naval Guard, often arrested or their vessels boarded, or else told to turn back from the waters, otherwise blocked from entry. And this would kind of disrupt the Irish fishing industry, made worse when the UK left Brexit, because they were no longer under European Union policy and so were free to deny Ireland access to their exclusive economic zone, which led to a lot of friction, as it was a fairly large disruption in the Irish fishing industry, which otherwise relied heavily on the Rockall Trough as a major source of fish. And there's been a lot of challenges in resolving this dispute. This is due to the fact that each nation has a fairly different idea of what's theirs, and it's difficult for them to come to any sort of compromise where all four are in agreement. Delimitation can only take place by the UN if all four parties have settled on a compromise they are all happy with. The UK and Ireland actually tried to settle the matter between themselves and failed to do so in a way that was very satisfactory, because although the UK government agreed to retract their claim to a significant region of the southern Rockall Plateau, the regions was still disputed by Iceland and Denmark, so Ireland couldn't really officially take control of that territory. So the future of Rockall, there doesn't really seem to be an end in sight. There have been several conferences held between the four nations, but it doesn't seem like they've come real close to any sort of conclusive deal yet. And talks have been delayed for numerous political reasons. Political priorities have changed within governments due to elections, and Britain leaving the European Union has kind of created a whole new set of complications. Additionally, as a sort of response to the effects of the Irish fishing economy from Brexit and the territorial waters of Rockall, the Irish media has sort of brought up the idea of Ireland having their own potential claim to the island of Rockall itself. And should this happen, it kind of adds another layer and complicates the entire situation further. That said, the entire dispute does have some global relevance in its resolution, as a similar situation is actually occurring in the Philippine Sea, as depicted here. The Okino Torishima Reef in Japan is claimed by the by Japan in a similar sort of way that the UK claims Rockall. However, they are using it for that 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, which is kind of drawing flack from China and South Korea as it's disrupting their own operations in the Pacific Sea. So it's difficult to say who Rockall belongs to. It's a very complicated issue, and it's something that the nations of Ireland, Iceland, Denmark, and the UK kind of have to work out amongst themselves. But it's obviously hard to come to any sort of compromise when the entire region seems to be fairly economically important, especially to Ireland and the UK. That said, the ultimate resolution definitely has some important political implications for these sorts of ocean border disputes, especially other similar ones ongoing in the globe. So it's something that needs to be carefully considered, and as it could set a fairly major precedent.